remember PT. I'm glad it's over. I hated that class. Love the game though, and it's a shame what happened to it. It was plucked before its prime, torn from the coils of this mortal earth before reaching its true potential. PT may be gone now, but it will live forever on in our hearts, and in our hard drives. One thing this fiasco has taught me is that I can't let anything happen to my PS4 now, and I can't ever uninstall this demo. Konami created thousands of new collector's items when they wiped PT off the store shelves, and also created something that will soon become the coolest game no one will get to play. I'm sure that Konami boosted interest into hacking the PS4 with this move too, because frankly now it's left up to pirates to preserve this free demo, rather than legitimate business. But until then, PT is going to exist as a living artifact. It has so much historical significance because it was a demo for a cancelled project. Decades from now, it will actually be more interesting than fully completed, shipped games. Because unlike those, it was full of ideas that were apparently too radical to see the light of day. It would be like having a playable release of Dead Sun or StarCraft Ghost. Is it still too soon to talk about The Last Guardian? Unlike those lost games, Silent Hills actually had something to show for its efforts. PT was tangible, concrete proof that Hideo Kojima, Guillermo del Toro, and Norman Reedus actually were collaborating on a Silent Hill game together. And the fact that you can actually play the product of their work speaks volumes more than any press releases, interviews, or post-mortem leaks could ever hope to say. It also stands as proof of the financial troubles AAA games development is currently enduring. With a trio of prolific names behind it, Konami had a product that would have appealed to Metal Gear fans, it would have appealed to Silent Hill fans, it would have appealed to Del Toro fans, and it would have even appealed to Walking Dead fans. No matter how bad they screwed up this game, it would have sold millions by name recognition alone. But somehow I doubt they would have screwed this game up. Developing a Kojima-directed Silent Hill game was just about the only thing left that could revive one of horror's greatest game franchises. The spookier moments of Kojima's games are so effective because they subvert player expectations, break the game world's coherency, and play with the fourth wall. And he does it all with a layer of unique Japanese weirdness and humor, despite the fact that most of his Metal Gear Solid games are designed to appeal to Westerners. And those are all traits that Silent Hill lost after it was shipped off to Western developers. Kojima might have made Metal Gear, but Guillermo del Toro made Pan's Labyrinth, which had visual design that was just as enchanting as it was disturbing. The monsters in that movie are brilliantly nonsensical. They hit all the same notes that Silent Hill's creatures do. His style has a way of exploiting gothic themes while also tapping into nerd culture, and those abilities would have served Silent Hill extremely well. Kojima and Del Toro have been friends for at least a few months before this project. Del Toro's always wanted to make a game, and Kojima's always wanted to break away from Metal Gear. He expressed interest in Silent Hill years before the project began, and never made a proper horror game. So there wasn't just name recognition behind that duo. There was also creative energy. It was new ground for both of them, even though they both had plenty of experience. There was real potential here. They were genuinely excited to be working on this. Which means they were genuinely bummed when it got cancelled. It was a perfect plan, really, foolproof, and only Konami could screw that up. So that's just one reason why PT has historical value. It's something they had to show for the efforts of an impossible collaboration, but it was also a pioneering marketing stunt. It was revealed, much like the Phantom Pain, as a new IP by a new developer. The design and marketing referenced this current trend of jump-scaring first-person horror indie games, but it had way more production values than that cover story let on. It takes only a glimpse to know that there was no way this game was put together on a budget without some kind of cutting-edge game engine. I mean, just look at it. Indie games don't look like this. It had an aura of mystique long before we knew what was actually going on. PT is still the best looking game on PS4, and it's also a great example of what current-gen games might eventually look like when we're not driving through the uncanny valley. Without a lot of human bodies, organic shapes, or moving objects to animate, PT manages to come the closest to photorealistic graphics that I've ever seen. That beauty may fade with time though, but the historical value will only increase. Hard drives with this thing on it will remain a collector's item for much the same reasons why the Nintendo World Championship card is. Not because it's some great lost gem of an excellent game, but rather because it's rare playable proof of a gaudy event that has long passed us. I mean, they did distribute about 1 million PT downloads. It's not exactly rare, but since you can't re-download it legitimately, it will become at least uncommon as the years roll on. And unlike a lot of plastic junk that turns into collector's items, PT was actually a good game. Hear me out here. It had the kind of careful attention to detail, pacing, and subtlety that only a 30-year career could provide. And it also has something I really, really miss. And that's Japanese horror made for Western audiences. Those games always had a foggy layer to their aesthetics that inevitably gets lost in translation, where there are just enough little things off in a familiar setting to make the whole package seem much more surreal. Like this radio announcer. "Don't touch that dial, we're just getting started." No one says that before a news report. Even the most schlocky of reality TV mockumentaries tend to treat the victims of crime with at least a little more respect than this guy does.
Police arriving on scene after neighbors called 911 found the father in his car listening to the radio.
And no one calls them 911 calls here either, so that's just a little bit off as well. Are these roaches having sex? Yep, they're having sex. There's an insane amount of foreshadowing here. You can actually barely see Lisa's ghost through the gap of the door once you boot the game for the first time. You might not have noticed it, but she's there. And once the ghost breaks out of the bathroom, you can actually see her shadow chasing you during successive loops. If you stop and play with her shadow, you'll notice that she tracks the direction you're facing so that she's always at your backside. Which is really important because this house is designed to keep your backside always vulnerable to her. Lisa's ghost can be sighted by the first door, by the loop door, by the window, in the bathroom mirror, on the bathroom floor, or upstairs, or just below upstairs, so no matter where you're looking, you're always turning your back to one of her entry points. And if that radio man wasn't enough of a dick, then take comfort in knowing that he knows your backside's vulnerable. The man on the radio talks about fathers killing their families. The first one does it with a rifle in the kitchen, the second one with a rifle and a meat cleaver. But the ghost haunting this house is of a woman apparently stabbed in a bathroom. The circumstances of her murder doesn't match up with what's going on the radio, suggesting that there are many more murders taking place than the radio would lead you to believe. It lends depth and world building to this situation without explicitly spelling it out for us. Why are so many fathers killing their families? We may never know, because the full game was cancelled. But that's okay, because good horror is all about the unknown. And PT is not exactly bound by really concrete, knowable rules. In a nutshell, it's a game about walking through the same looping hallway over and over again, with something slightly different changing each time. And somehow, just noticing what's changed is enough to trigger new loop conditions. But it's very, very easy to hit those triggers on accident, and also to fall into them organically without really trying. No one likes jump scares, but I really like how they led up to the first of the 2 jump scares in this demo. On loop number 3, after the rules have been established and the doors have been marked, you suddenly get locked out of that process. Turning around triggers the bathroom door to open, where roaches spill out of the gap in the door. Remember all that foreshadowing about gaps in doors? Those clues, along with the visual movement of the roaches, guides the player's eyes towards not the doorknob itself, but rather the gap in the door, where upon further observation, the player notices they can't get their eyes to adjust to the dark without zooming in which case, bam! Oh no, you got spooked. Say what you will about jump scares, but I will say they did a damn good job of designing that one jump scare in particular. If you went through that whole process without actively stopping to test the scripts, you would have accidentally triggered the scare without really knowing what you did to trigger it. And that's great, because not knowing things is great horror. PT was a lengthy exercise of not knowing things, of accidentally hitting script triggers and not knowing what they changed, of not knowing the ghost's AI or whether or not getting killed by her counts as a fail state or even as a death at all. It's one of the few games where the player ideally is confused the whole time. It's so vague that playing it with a strategy guide feels like the way it was meant to be played, because even a strategy guide is not enough to spoil its challenge. It's probably the only single-player horror game that's played better with friends, which was the whole idea, after all. Kojima wanted people to solve these problems online together, as a social experience. It was played best in a crowded room full of nervous, hushed people who were actually only quiet when they weren't arguing over whether or not the walkthrough was going to be right next time. My fondest memory of PT is of my second playthrough. I was watching a friend struggle with that final puzzle, and it really does seem like a crapshoot if you haven't done it a few times before. There were 3 people in the room with us, and they were hating it and loving it, and I wouldn't let them all agree on what to do next. During that final puzzle, someone got angry and asked, who the hell would even make a game like this? Just before a spectacular grand reveal that couldn't have answered that question any better.